Greetings and welcome to Ghost Stories of Washington as we continue. Chapter 2, The Spirits Inn, Part 2, Spirits with Your Meal. Some people wonder about the identity of the ghost haunting the E.R. Rogers restaurant in Silicon. But Jim Garvin is not one of them. Every night when I leave here, and I'm here for 5 or 6 nights a week, I lock up, Jim said. And every time I say good night, Katherine, have a good evening. Obviously, there's no doubt in this personable man's mind that the ghost with whom he shares his workspace is that of Katherine Rogers. Katherine was the wife of the original homeowner, Edwin R. Rogers, a wealthy merchant and seaman who built the impressive house in 1891. Unfortunately, the man's fortune collapsed less than 3 years later, and the family was forced to move out of their grand home. Thereafter, the place changed hands frequently. The Bears, who owned the now haunted Bear Drug Store in Stillicum, bought the property in 1920, thinking that its 17 rooms would be ideal for a profitable boarding house. The place served that purpose until the Bear's death in the late 1940s. Then the former mansion sat empty until the 1960s, when plans were made to tear down the palatial home. Fortunately, wiser heads prevailed, and the building was preserved. Today, a few folks have been known to wonder if the female presence in the old Rogers home might be Hattie Bear. However, Katherine Rogers would have had a far greater emotional stake in the house, so it is more likely that the popular opinion is correct and Katherine is the ghost. There can be no question that at least one presence in the restaurant is female, for she, more accurately, parts of her have been seen. She is usually not very active, but a man who had been enjoying a drink at the upstairs bar was most startled to see what he described as a woman's foot in stockings suddenly materialize at his eye level. The apparition moved upward before disappearing into the attic. The sight must have been an unnerving one, but its location was not a surprise to anyone who knew the house. That area is known to be a favorite of the ghosts, as Jim Garvin put it. Sometimes people put stuff up there and then lock the attic, and the next day the stuff's been moved. The attic area was also implicated in what was, at the time, thought to be a break-in. The police were called, and they arrived with a trained dog. The animal swept through the entire ground floor, as he had done in dozens of previous searches. When nothing suspicious was found, the dog's handlers instructed the animal to continue his search upstairs in the attic. For the first time in its life, the expertly trained dog refused to obey the command. No amount of ordering could coaxing could persuade the animal to enter that area. The police officer finally gave up and searched the area himself. The attic was empty, or whatever was in there couldn't be detected by human eyes. On another occasion, not long after Jim had arrived home from a long shift, he received a call from the security company responsible for the alarm system in the house. They told me that the alarm had been activated and wanted to know, did I leave anyone in the building, he recalled. I said, no, there's no one in the building. If you want to talk to someone who is close by, you need to call the bookkeeper who lives down the street. So they call her, and she says, well, it's probably the ghost, and goes back to sleep. They call her again and say, no, there really is something going on in the house. So she gets down there and meets the police. The police go in and their guns drawn and flashing, flashlights blazing, and the police dog would not enter the building. They kept trying and trying, but it would not go in. So they searched the whole building and found nothing. They came back out, reset the alarm, locked up, and left. The dog never would go into the building. Another episode undermined Jim's composure on a considerably more personal level. This must go back 5 or 6 years, he said. While locking up at night, we turned off the lights in the house. Certain lights stay on, such as the safety lights. On this particular evening, we went to the back door and I hit the alarm code so the security system would activate. Because my car was parked out back, I exited through the rear door and locked it behind me. I got in the car, started it up, and all of the lights in the house came on. Every single light in the house. I came back in, turned off the alarm, went to the phone, called the alarm company, and they say, no, there's not been an activation of any lights on in the building whatsoever. I said, no, I'm telling you that every light on in this house is on. They repeat, no, there's no activation. So I went around and turned off every light in the house from the attic all the way down to the basement. Then I hit the alarm again, locked up the building again, turned to leave, and the lights all came back on. My, oh my. The frustration the man must have felt at the time was still evident in his voice while he was talking about the incident. He was careful to assure me that the house is up to the standards of the building code. It's not like this is an old house that's not up to code. At this point in the evening, Jim had already worked a full day. He knew there was no one in the house, at least no one corporal, who could have caused any harm to come to the old place. He stood by his car staring at the well-lit house and declared, Katherine, you must be having a party. I'm out of here. There was one last kicker to that strange night. When Christy Gourneau, the restaurant's bookkeeper, arrived at work the following day, she found all the lights turned off. The staff of a local rug cleaning company had much the same experience. The company had been contracted to go into the restaurant after closing and clean all the carpets. The next day, the manager opened up and discovered that just one rug in the room had been cleaned. He called the company to ask what the problem was, and he was told that while there would be no charge for what they had done, the workers would not be back ever. They were convinced that the place was haunted and informed the restaurant manager that no uncertain terms that they refused to go back in and were not even interested in discussing the situation. Less dramatic encounters occur regularly. Staff members hear their names spoken, but no one has called them, and no one is nearby. Hostess Jennifer Laughlin remembers suddenly detecting the scent of perfume and sensing that she was not alone, at a time when she knew she was by herself in the building. As is common with many spirits, Katherine interferes with all manner of electrical wiring and electronic appliances. She causes VCRs and speaker systems to malfunction. She plays with the lights around the house. She's credited with changing channels on the television when no one is visibly near the set. Some of the restaurant equipment has even been known to fail intermittently for no apparent reason. Candles will mysteriously fly off the tables and slam against the floor. Most people feel that these pranks are the work of the resident female wraith, but There are also those who have seen Edwin's image sitting in a rocking chair and looking out a north-facing window. They say that no matter where in the house they put the chair, it always turns up in front of that same window. According to Jim Girvan, the haunting at Roger's restaurant has something of a seasonal flavor. Katherine's ghost seems to be more and most active around fall and winter time. He says, it was at that time of the year that Jim had his most amazing encounter with Katherine. One night, I was sitting upstairs at the bar. There were 2 dining rooms upstairs and a couple of ottomans sitting out in the hallway. I was waiting for Kathy, one of the servers, to finish so we could lock up and leave. I was sitting on an ottoman in a hallway that leads down to the dining room. As I was sitting there, just thinking about nothing, I didn't see anybody walking, but I did see indentations, footsteps going across the carpet. The footsteps turned at the corner and went toward the women's room. They turned around and came back. Then they went into the south dining room, which is where most of the strange activity had been in the last few years. So Kathy came up the stairs and said, "What's wrong with you? You're as white as a ghost." And I said, "You won't believe what I've just seen." Despite Jim's suspicious that his co-worker would not believe him, he told Kathy in great detail about the indentations forming in the carpet as though an invisible person had walked past. Kathy evidently did believe him. She immediately got goosebumps. He said, "You could still see the footprints, the indentations on the carpet." Understandably, the pair did not dally. As Jim put it, we just hit the alarm and left. There may be some debate as to whether the ghost in the building is the spirit of Katherine Rogers, but there can be no doubt that the E.R. Rogers restaurant is, in fact, haunted. Hopefully you enjoyed that story, and I look forward to bringing you the next episode in the not-so-distant future, which will be Chapter 2, The Spirits Inn, Part 3, Ghost to Go. We'll see you next time. Hopefully you enjoyed the story tonight. Take care.